The demand for group and private events is at an all-time high. Is your business ready to capitalize on all these opportunities? With Restaurant as your booking partner, you can ensure event success this year and beyond.
With no booking fees or commissions, Restaurant has helped over 2,000 restaurants, bars, and breweries reach local event planners who are looking for a space for their next gathering. Whether it's a birthday, anniversary, graduation, or corporate event, Restaurant will get your space booked.
Try it today and receive 3 months completely risk-free by signing up at restaurant.com/podcast. That's restaurant.com/podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia Sarek.
And I'm Spencer Michael.
And this is So You Want to Run a Restaurant, created by the team at backofhouse.io, the most trusted resource for restaurant tech.
Today's episode is a little different from our usual conversations with operators, and intentionally so. We're joined by Liz Einhorn, founder of Experience 3. Now, that's Experience 3 with 3 E's. The E's stand for Explore, Educate, and Engage. It's a consulting firm focused on hospitality growth, strategy, brand, and concept development.
That's right. Liz has worked across beverage, restaurants, and even airport concepts. So this is going to be a really interesting part of the conversation today. And she's seen firsthand where businesses get stuck and what it actually takes for a restaurant to scale in a sustainable, strategic way.
Yeah. So in this conversation, we're digging into the patterns she sees across restaurants, the mistakes people make when trying to grow, and how to think more intentionally about building a business that actually works, not just one that stays busy.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We're super thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So we love to start off at the beginning. Tell us about your journey into hospitality. What first drew you to this industry?
Sure. So I grew up in a food family. We weren't
Great.
out of restaurants or things like that. My grandparents on my dad's side had fruit and vegetable stores.
Mm-hmm.
And on my mom's side, my grandparents were really involved in something called Cook for a Friend. So I was always kind of at this intersection of food and community.
Mm-hmm.
And my first job was actually, I'm a Philly native and we go to the Jersey Shore every summer. So my first job ever besides babysitting was scooping ice cream at the Jersey Shore at 13.
I bet
That
you've
was-
got fun stories from that.
Were
I
you
have
on
many-
Was this on MTV? You doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be very clear that there are 2 Jerseys. There's people talk about North Jersey, South Jersey. So my Jersey Shore is Ventnor. We are very far away from the Jersey Shore. That's like gym tan laundry.
Yeah.
Very different.
In my head, I'm seeing Snooki in my head. That's exactly where my
Exactly,
brain went
yeah.
to when you
That
said
is-
Jersey Shore.
I
So-
appreciate the reference, but that's not, unfortunately, that's not the hairdo that I had at 13, thank God. But with that in mind, it was a lot of fun, and I waitressed and served and washed dishes and worked in hospitality in college. And then I have a history in my career of doing things that my family are like, wait, what are you doing? And then I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. And then it works out really well. So the family joke is that I sold drugs before I sold beer. I did pharmaceutical sales for Johnson &
Love it.
Johnson. And then I, at the time, was doing promo stuff for Diageo on the side just for fun.
Mhm.
And through a friend of a friend, I heard about a job at Sam Adams. And I was like, at Boston Beer. And I was like, oh, doing like promo modeling, like what I've done with US Concepts and Diageo. And they were like, no, in sales. I was like, that's a job? And then I'm amazing. And
I
then
had no idea.
Who knew?
I'd be good.
Yeah.
I'd be really good at that.
I'm like,
kidding.
amazing. So
Mhm.
I spent 10 years at Boston Beer, had a really atypical career track there, did sales locally in Philly, did quite well. Opportunity presented itself to call on the airports. And I raised my hand and they were like, what do you know about airports? And I was like,
Mhm.
there are planes at the airport.
And a
And
j-
people
and a
like to
jetway.
drink there. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Fake it till you make it, baby.
1000%. Welcome to hospitality. And
Yeah.
so I, within a year, oversaw all the airports and stadiums for the US, spent several years in that role. And that's where I
Mhm.
first really got to, obviously I was in sales. So priority was distribution, getting the product into market, but also I managed the Sam Adams branded concept program. So if you ever see like Sam Adams Toast Atlanta or Brew Club, those were my babies. And it was such a fun, juicy time to be at Boston Beer because I was the only one that did my job. So when we were launching products nationally,
Mhm.
I was part of the team that got to take Angry Orchard national. Truly Seltzer I was part of the team that took that national. So it was great to see that. And then from the airport role, I got promoted to working with national on-premise chains. So Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Texas Roadhouse, and then also like emerging restaurant groups. Because the days of Applebee's opening 1,200 more Applebee's, that had that ship had sailed. It was more of like looking
Yeah.
at, if I'll reference someone in Philadelphia, Star Restaurants. So they operate like a chain. They cross multiple state lines. And they're a lot of fun there, but they're not a chain in the sense that they're all different. So it's different concepts. And especially in terms of beverage, what you're going to drink at a French bistro isn't what you're going to have at like a Mexican taqueria.
Totally.
But that's where between that and the airport space and growing the brands, I just kind of fell in love with the intersection of like brand and business development. And I've had Experience 3 for 9 years now. So we work with brands, chefs, restaurants, all within the hospitality space, helping them figure out their growth strategy. So, and a lot of that work is in airports. So I know we're really excited to chat about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. You've had such an interesting vantage point throughout your entire career. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's jump into the airport
Yeah,
portion of
please.
what you do, and because this is
Yeah.
now, if you've got a great concept locally in your community, it's naturally to want to be in the airport. You think you're successful. Okay, this is where I can get a lot of marketing, a lot of brand awareness. I can make some sales, but the path there is a bit different than maybe people think.
So every airport, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. It's really cheesy, but we always say like when you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. So they're all different. And even within the airport, sometimes by terminal, you're going to have different operators and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they make it easy.
Break down. Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is why I have a job. This is why my team and I are very busy and very tired in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
So within the airports themselves, you've got different spaces in the airport where you're going to have different concepts. And they have, usually anywhere from 7 to 12-year lease terms. So that's something too, like as opposed to like growing on the street where it's kind of like, okay, I want to open a restaurant in Brooklyn. You can work with a broker, you can kind of see what availability is, there. In airports, depending on where the airport is in its lease term and if whether or not it has active procurement and RFPs, requests for proposals coming out, there might not be an immediate opportunity. And more often than not, when the spaces come out, it's not like that you're just like, okay, cool, I want to bid on space 1 in Terminal 1. Space 1 in Terminal 1 may be dedicated to coffee or Mexican or retail shop. So if you're a pizza concept, the opportunity is not necessarily there. And again, different procurements and RFPs are going to operate differently by airport, even sometimes by terminal, as I said before. So the airport authority, or if they have a developer, they put out the bid and they're like, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. So then my team and I we track all the RFPs. We understand the opportunities that are coming in. We do work internationally, but our primary focus is, continentally here in the US, but domestically rather. And so we'll say, okay, we'll use Atlanta as an example. Atlanta has a burger, a travel retail, which when you hear like travel retail, travel essentials, that's your Hudson News, your Parodies shops, where you go,
you see everywhere.
Everything you've left at home, or when you want your Cheez-Its or your gummy bears. I will say I always like to ask people what their favorite airport snack is. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you guys questions.
Please do.
That's
airport snack?
That's a really good question. I like to buy a salty snack and a sweet snack before I get on the planes. And then I like to buy anything that's easy to eat and shareable. So like a bag of M&Ms or a bag of those mini Kit Kats or something chocolatey though.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about
That's
you,
where I'm
Spencer?
at. Yeah, I think chocolatey as well. The Kit Kat bites, I think that's
good.
probably what I bought more often than not.
Success in this industry isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones going right. It's the split check that doesn't stall the line and the mid-shift menu edit that actually syncs.
At Toast, they're obsessed with precision. While others build for everyone, they build for the chaos of the real world. Their platform is packed with 1,000 little solutions designed to catch bottlenecks before they happen.
Get tech built for the way you actually work at pos.toasttab.com. I want to ask you a direct question here. So for someone tuning into this episode and they're saying, hey, I'm thinking about launching into an airport, or I would love to do something like this. Where do you start, and what kind of metrics would you even have to look at for somebody to say, yeah, your brand could actually be pretty successful in a space like that? Because that's one space where foot traffic isn't an issue, but it's brands still come and go. Talk
Absolutely.
to us about that.
Yeah, so that's a multi-layered, phenomenal question. So the first thing is accepting you're not running the concept. So it's very rare. Like I said, each of the procurements and RFPs that are out there are different, but typically they're packages. So if you we'll just use the pizza concept as an example. If you have a pizza concept, that could be part of a package that has 4 other restaurants that are there. It's very
Mhm.
rare for somebody to come in and self-operate. So you're not operating yourself. So you need to be comfortable with licensing the brand. And there's
Yep.
so much that falls under that. So how reliant is the concept on its founder? Can it operate without the founder being there? What is the
Mhm.
sense of the brand itself? I mean, we're going to treat brands differently and evaluate them differently if it's a restaurant that has multiple locations versus a one-off.
Mhm.
There's so much in the airport space that the time from when the bid comes out to when you submit, for consideration to when you're awarded it to construction to opening, it can be several years. So much of the work that we do also is trend forecasting. Is it going to be relevant, 2, 3 years from now? Is the concept of what you're doing there? I mean, there is no room for error in airports. You're in such small condensed spaces. So you need to be thinking about, can you operate this in a self-contained unit without
Yeah.
commissary or without a ton of extra storage space? Are you able from a supply chain perspective? Is it something where you're going to be able to do? You have to think about how things will get delivered. The process to just get a tomato through the airport, it's harder than getting a person through TSA. Truly.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's thinking about your ingredients, thinking about the deliveries. That's something, there's a concept I developed for SeaTac, which is a concept that's geared around local beers, wines, and spirits, and working with local distilleries and such out in the Pacific Northwest, which was such a fun project rather. It was something where we had to switch them on. You have to think about, you can't use this. As delightful and delicious as their beers are, they self-distribute. They have no way to deliver to the airport. So you have to think about, the front end of operationally how things are going to get there, and then the throughput at the restaurant. Because for it to be, I agree that, airports, it's not just about it being a revenue driver, it's a brand machine. When it's done the right way, you don't have a better billboard. Because to your point, Claudia, what you
Mhm.
said before, there's a captive audience. You don't have to worry about the foot traffic. They're there,
Right.
and more often than not, they're delayed. So they're hungry and they're annoyed, and they want whether it's a salty sweet snack or a Bloody Mary, they're
Yeah, they want to hang out at one of these concepts. But it sounds like it's a really large overhaul for anybody that wants to go into one of these spaces. And I'm wondering about the ones, because, whenever you go into an airport, there's usually brand recognition. Like you recognize a lot of the brands that are already in there.
absolutely
And I wonder if that helps. I have seen other airports, though, that are trying to showcase more local
thousand
restaurants and
percent.
local cuisine. But then I think about you got to be in there for 7 years or however long these leases are. And I think to myself, wow, like some of these independents don't even last 3, you know?
You called it. That's a big issue that we're seeing, because in the
Yeah.
last 10, 15 years, there's been a huge push for local sense of place, taste of place
Right.
in airports, as there should be, right? I think the
Which makes
best
sense.
A ton,
Yeah.
1,000%. I think the best
Yeah.
ways and the best concessions programs that I see out there are the ones that have the balance of national, local, regional, so that
Mm,
because as much as people want to taste local, planes and flying can be really anxious and anxiety producing for folks. So sometimes they want the comfort of something that they know, they want to know what they're getting, right?
mhm.
They're not necessarily there to explore. So it's also finding that balance of thinking about, and again, this is showing you guys how the sauce is made, but also evaluating like what carrier is there, what brand is going to work in a terminal that's run by Delta or United might be different than a brand that's going to, be successful in a Spirit or Southwest terminal. And it doesn't mean that
That's interesting.
there's one that's good and one that's bad. It's just thinking about your audience, which is something when you think about growth, you should be doing whether you're on the street or a non-tread anyway. I think that's where a lot of operators miss the mark, because they either don't have a fully defined self, a sense of who they are as a brand or a concept, and then as part of that, they don't know how to incorporate or have a menu that is geared towards their audience. And that's something too operationally to think about without getting too granular, but you have to think about like your menu, how things are prepared. To me, something that we work with brands on a lot is thinking so much about back of house, truly, like not to be a nerd and reference that, but thinking about like operationally, like what equipment can you use? Also, you need to make sure, airports weren't necessarily designed for restaurants. So I had, and sometimes the people that are writing the bids, they're not restaurateurs. So my personal favorite is when I see something for, a hamburger concept, but it has no fryer. So I'm like, okay, we're not going to have French fries. We're not, there's no venting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
like when
like,
they offer you a bag of chips and I'm like, no, I want fries. I don't want a
Yeah.
bag of chips.
yes,
Right.
yes. There's a time and a place for chips and they're amazing. But yes,
Yeah.
it's trying to like navigate through all of those different layers.
Mhm.
But I think to your point, there's to have the sense of place really be successful, you want to have the airports themselves that are putting out these bids. They're starting to change the definition of what is local. One of the larger airports recently had that you had to have a minimum of 3 locations on the street. And I think that was there as a protection to make sure the likelihood of something closing within the lease term, if there's multiple locations, it protects from that.
It makes a ton of sense. I go back to what you said at the top is can this function without the operator being in place? And I think for me, that should be the question for any restaurant ever.
Yeah,
Like
not even just airports.
not just for
Agreed.
airports. If you want to scale or if you want to just operate this as a business, it needs to, you need to build systems in place so that you can walk away and nothing changes, and not walk away
Absolutely.
for good. I mean, just walk away for an evening and enjoy your life, or go on vacation and nothing changes, because there's going to be some transient employees at airports going in and out, and it has to be plug and play. Your cook, your server, your bartender have to be able just to slot into a space to say, do this now. Here's how we function. Okay, I'm good.
And that varies by airport. Like not everyone has that 3 location rule. Some also have locals defined by it had to be the origin of the restaurant had to be in that city. So even if it's somewhere that has 5 locations, if it's a bid for the Nashville airport and the concept is based in Dallas, it's not a local concept by that definition, and that's just a hypothetical. But I think there's so many layers to it. And you're right, there's a lot of the principles that are in the airport that this isn't signature to the airport. This is for operators.
Right.
This resonates across the board. I think that it's something where when you want to think about, and you hit the magic word for me, which is systems. Like I'm very much an efficiency enthusiast. So like that's where, I know there's a lot of jokes around the chains, but it is so hard to have a restaurant taste the same in Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Las Vegas at the same time.
For sure.
And I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, like
sure.
I've spent
There's a ton of thought that goes into creating menu items that can be replicated by multiple different people in different languages across different areas.
Well, and I think that I always challenge restaurants too of like, how do you see yourself? Like, what are you trying to do? I feel like so many operators get in their own way. It's something where,
No kidding.
and I say that with love,
I
again.
don't say it. I say it with the stick waving in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Get
like, we're
out
using
here.
the carrot, you're using the
Get
stick.
out of
Game
your own way.
recognizes game, like pot, kettle,
Yeah.
black. We all do it, and that's why I can recognize the behavior. But I
Yeah.
think it's something where when the brands that have the most potential to scale are the ones that are consistent, the ones that do have systems in place and who understand who they are and do have the capability to walk away because they're not too reliant on the founder. Even on when you think about your ingredients and thinking about supply chain, like if there's something where, I love seeing more and more restaurants connecting with local farms, but that's something where that's an ongoing opportunity, I think, in airports to drive more sustainability that's a way that I think we can support local in a way that's incredibly meaningful. It's not just about having a local concept, but how can we serve local communities? And obviously, I have a bias towards beverage. That's my background. That's so much of what I do. But I think beverage programming is also a way, even if you have a chain or a well known restaurant, to celebrate local beverage is a great way to give a taste of place in a format that's more turnkey, so you don't run the risk of this, the reality is like if a brewery goes out of business, there will be another local IPA.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. I want to go back to something that you touched on, which is airports can be an amazing tool for a brand to really explode and a brand to really get that recognition. Can you tell us about an experience you've had with a brand where maybe that happened? You don't have to name the brand, or kind of what that trajectory has been like for some of these concepts that have really exploded and why that is?
Think that so if somebody's coming through on a layover and there's a brand that's local, they might not have exposure to it where they're from. So I've been working with Velvet Taco for the last couple of years. And
Velvet Taco,
yeah, they're super fun and it's a really fun creative brand. And so Velvet is kind of on one side of the spectrum that they really push the boundaries of, what is a taco, and it's truly global flavors. Like their chicken tikka taco is one of the things that they're known for. And their menu's so fun, and But
Yeah.
we work with Rick Bayless and Tortazo and Tortas Frontera, which is,
Mm-hmm.
obviously Tortazo is his fast casual arm that's in the airport. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really for both of those, they both have a place, both for the traveler and in the airport. For Rick, so many people, know Chef Rick from being a celebrity chef and from different shows that he's competed on, but then they can go and they can taste his food, which is really exciting. And then Velvet, if there's somebody that's traveling through Houston, that's from the Northeast where they don't have locations on the street, I'll get messages from friends and they're like, oh my gosh, like, what is this queso? What is, I just had a buffalo chicken
Yeah.
taco that was great. So I think it's a really fun experience
Mm-hmm.
from a guest standpoint, for them to get to see a brand where they might not be going to that city, but it's a way for
Mm-hmm.
them to get a taste of that city and then do it with a brand that both brands in different ways have really successfully navigated how to be successful in the airport space. And that's not
Yeah.
self-serving of three, that's with total collaboration, with their teams. And they're so, going back to, I think, the brands that are the most successful, whether it's expanding into airports or just growth in general, are the ones that all stakeholders within the brand communicate and talk with each other. So
Mm.
operations, marketing, everyone's on the same page of what they're
Yeah.
like. It's a holistic approach versus folks working in silos. And I think that's something, hospitality or not, is a principle that is often not necessarily honored.
100%
Yeah.
No,
agree.
absolutely. So and beyond this, we've talked about airports quite a bit. I know it's probably a chunk of what you do, but there's other
And I love it.
areas. Yeah, they're
It's fun.
perfect.
Airport
Yeah.
nerd.
So other areas, so for a restaurant operator out there that is not looking to expand into an airport but wants to scale, this is an area you help out as well.
And I think it's like also defining what growth is for them. Sometimes you can have growth when you only have one location. And I
Right.
think that it's understanding, like, you could have a really busy restaurant, but what if it's not busy at lunch? Like, thinking about your day parts, being able to optimize each of your day parts, that's growth. Thinking
Mm-hmm.
about your menu and how to retain staff, that's growth. I think that retention is often seen as like the enemy of growth, complacent or things like that. It's not. It's being consistent, and I think that's understanding who their audience is in terms of like what restaurants make sense for them to work with or what
Mm-hmm.
makes sense for them to add in their portfolio. It's the same thing with restaurateurs. A lot of the principles of things that we would do to conduct like research and development in a certain geographic market they're thinking about for an airport can also be translated for street side. So we'll do analyses based on that market of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there's XYZ is trending, but there's a gap here. There's not this type of restaurant, or you're seeing, this demographic is really moving in. We saw that a lot post COVID. There were so many shifts in where people were moving. Like there was a mass exodus from Brooklyn to Philadelphia or New York in general to Philly. So kind of looking at that map a lot of work in the DC area. I'm spending a lot of time seeing the shift recently from like Arlington to all the millennials are now moving like they want a yard. they want
Yeah.
they're moving like what else is happening in Northern Virginia and like what does that mean for them? Really interesting to me because all of this stuff is interconnected. I think understanding consumer behavior really translate. I like to spend time in the restaurants. Like strategy is not a deck
Yeah.
like spend
Absolutely.
time in the restaurants. Like I see operators that they're so lost in the sauce of the day to day, they don't have the time or the energy to put towards how do I grow next. And there's ways to kind of take it a step back and have it so that they can kind of reevaluate. But it's a privilege to do that because there's
Mm-hmm.
so many different variables. The more tuned in you are, the more consistent you are, and the more again, hate to, be repetitive, but the more systems you have in place, the more you can actually do moving forward.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine that would define also the operators that you talk to in some of the restaurants that you advise should scale versus the ones that maybe you're like, actually, like a boutique is better for you or a one or two location seems like that's way more in line with how you're doing things. I mean,
I was wondering about that conversation as well. Is have you had that
yeah,
talk about you're not ready for this?
you're not, yeah,
I
you,
say no more than I say yes.
Okay.
okay.
I think transparency is a superpower.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take on a client that if I wasn't a concessionaire, I wouldn't want to operate myself in the airport. There's
Mm-hmm.
concepts that I'm like, your concept is fantastic, but you need to figure out how to, like, you're telling me your PITA takes 4 days to proof. That's not going to work in an airport. So,
Yeah, it's
you
just the
know,
realities of it.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
it's thinking about how can we do things in a way, and it's also not all airport spaces are created equal. There are some that, are incredible visibility, incredible volume, incredible dollars, life-changing dollars for restaurateurs, but there's also some that are dogs. And it's a tough conversation, but I'd rather have that conversation up front than 4 years
Totally.
down the line have them be like, what's happening here?
How quickly can you tell if it's going to struggle or like,
Immediately.
hey, okay, what are the tells?
Okay, wait. Clarification question. Is
Mm-hmm.
it a QSR or full service?
Let's
Okay,
do,
Let's
yeah.
start with
QSR,
QSR.
if I walk in and I don't know where I am, or I see 8 different things, when it's like chicken, beef, tacos, Mexican, shrimp, if you're doing 8 different things, you're not doing any of them well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now what about the other kinds of
Full
restaurants?
serve.
What would you
I hope I don't sound like a brat when I say this. If I
No.
walk in and the host is on their phone or they don't make eye contact or they're not nice or whatever, like if your first interaction is not, I mean, I don't need
Rude
to,
and
I
aloof?
don't need to be your best friend, but just like, hi,
You need to
welcome.
acknowledge.
Yeah, that's I would say 9.9 out of 10 times. That tells me everything I need to know.
100%. That all comes down to systems and training and setting the expectation. The face, they're the face, because that's how I would train hostesses. It's like, look, they see our sign, they see our parking lot, they open our door, and it's you. You're the face.
Exactly. So looking ahead, what do you think that restaurants need to be paying more attention to right now that they might be overlooking in their businesses?
How to balance human interaction and hospitality tech. I think we need to not be afraid of hospitality tech. I don't think there's tech that's perfect. Also don't think humans are perfect. So it's striking the balance and also doing it in a way that works for you and your concept, not doing it because someone down the street is doing it or because a great salesman is telling you to do it. Like should solve a problem for you. Like that's why to me, tech is there to provide solutions. It goes back to that idea of making sure everyone's communicating. So making sure they understand how to do that. But also if your people are a huge part of your experience, you don't want that to go away.
I feel like that's a good message, especially for all of the AI stuff that's coming out right now, too. Like, how much can we really replace, and how much of the human do we take out versus not, and how much of it is just adding to the efficiency to allow the humans to do more in other areas that are maybe more customer service focused?
Yeah, because I think so much about how a concept feels. And that's something
Hmm.
that we think about on the street or in non-traditional spaces. Like I love going out to eat. I think that there is something about, and like when you can see the dance of like when back of house and front of house are kind of working together and it's great.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm the same person who 5 minutes ago just said that I want someone to say hello to me. I don't want them touching my table 10 times though during the meal. Like
No.
I
Yeah.
I think that it's a lot of this comes back to systems and trainings. I love when a server tells me something they don't like on the menu. When I ask the server for a suggestion and they tell me every single thing that they love and they list the entire menu, I'm like, congratulations, you remembered what they told you at family meal. But I don't, I literally, I wanted help, So
Yeah.
I think when they tell me something that they don't like, or conversely, something that they're really excited about, I think that's really fun.
On the fly round is up next.
Are you
This is
ready? Have
fun.
you have you heard this? I want the Monica. I'm so good at lightning rounds when we
Let's go.
introduce this
I
from
mean, my
Friends.
background's in sales. I'm so competitive.
I need two on the fly. One word you wish more operators would think about when building their business.
Consistency. Or bathrooms.
Bathrooms.
Consistency, I get. Bathrooms. Please continue.
Yeah, I was like, say more.
I feel like sometimes people don't think about where their bathroom is or how the bathroom door will like go into the kitchen. You
It's
don't
an
think,
important piece of a restaurant.
yeah.
There was a famous restaurant here locally to me that they didn't market. They took their marketing budget and built these incredibly amazing bathrooms. The glass you'd shut the door to the stall and the glass would smoke out, and you'd open it again, it would go clear again. And so what did you do when you left the bathroom? You talked to every
Bathrooms
I
are
thought you
so
were
hot
gonna
right now. They really
I was just going to say that you walk into any ladies' room in Chicago right now, and it's all the girls taking selfies because they always the new concepts are all these really fun wallpapers, cool, the perfect lighting for a selfie.
Yes.
I'm like, and they're posting it online. I can recognize them now when I see them online.
They're having a moment. Bathrooms
They're
are
having a moment.
Bathrooms are having a moment for sure.
Yeah, the restaurant's Instagrammable, and so is the bathroom now.
Wow.
Vern's in Charleston, their flower arrangements in their bathroom, go. Do not pass
See what
go.
I mean?
Yeah.
See? Something in hospitality that you think is overrated right now.
Just one thing?
You can't say Instagrammable bathrooms.
We've already discussed how it's so
I
underrated.
mean, as someone as part of our services that we don't do day-to-day social, but I think content creators are so overrated right now.
Okay, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's a hot take.
Like
Yeah.
influencers or just
Yeah,
like
say
someone
more.
hiring someone to create content?
Well, so here's the thing. I think hiring someone, if you have a set strategy and you know who you are, or you're hiring that person to help you understand your strategy and to connect with the right audience, that's you making an investment in you and your brand. I stand that. Like, high five. It comes down to behavior. Like we talked about how in airports, people are either the best or worst version of themselves. There's no there's no middle ground. And my thing is that if it's one thing if you're at an event as an influencer or content creator where you're there with other influencers, when you're at a restaurant and you bring out your ring light and you do all of the other stuff, when other people are dining, I feel like it's not considerate of the table next to you. Are influencers and content creators out there that are truly authentic to what they do? There's a gentleman in Philly, Josh Eats Philly, who I think is outstanding. Like to me, he is the gold standard of what we want because he really takes the time to understand the establishments that he's going to. He's not going to post something if he doesn't believe in it. Like that, those principles I think are great. But this, I can't tell you how many times I see someone, they don't even eat the food. I'm like, please eat the food.
So it's a delicate balance. I was a food influencer in Chicago. I have the Chicago Foodie handle. I still own it. And I would say
I love you.
Yeah, right. No, I think this is a very honest conversation, though. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that there's two different groups of this. And I think that I could do a whole episode on the challenges of being a content creator and how hard it is on the content creation side. But I could also do an episode on, how to work with restaurants and like how to actually make those opportunities more valuable for both parties before you go into that situation.
That goes back to that whole idea of, thinking about day parts. Social, when executed correctly, that's a great platform to utilize to kind of bring in awareness. The way that people search for new things. It's like, I was part of a conversation recently where it was like, okay, are folks using lists like the Eater or James Beard Awards or things like that to dictate where they're going to go if they're going to a new city, or are they looking on Instagram?
They're looking on TikTok and Instagram. Seriously.
Yeah.
A lot of the research is pointing to that people are using TikTok to search for restaurants to go to before they'll go on to one of the local publications, which is just such a change
a whole
of
other
behavior.
episode. Yeah.
That's a whole nother episode. Yeah. Okay. Last question here. What's your hot take right now for the industry?
I mean, without sounding super self-serving, I think airport food can be great. It can and it should be great.
Yeah.
I think that for so long, there's this idea that airport food is slimy turkey sandwiches. And it's not. People are really, the concessionaires, the airports themselves are really making dedicated efforts to have the airport itself be just as much of a destination as where folks are going.
Yeah,
And
it's come a long way.
And there's still, pun intended, a lot of runway before I see what I did there.
I like that.
I might need to go home. But all of this is to say,
Runway, everybody.
yeah, here we are, experience 3. All of this is like, I think that it's okay to think outside the box, and it's okay to have your restaurant be outside of its 4 walls. So whether that's at an airport, or if I can expand my hot take to pop-ups or collaborations, I'm seeing more and more meaningful collabs with restaurants that are bringing in folks that really respect what the other does and bringing them into their, especially restaurants that aren't even in the same market. Somebody in New Orleans brings somebody in that's in Minneapolis just because they share a common value, or I think that's so incredible. And I want people to, I think that we lose sight of that. If there's one thing that somebody can take away from this episode, it's don't be afraid to say no. That absolutely will help fuel your growth. Don't be afraid to say no.
A lot of that is prioritization. It's like when everything is the goal, nothing is the goal.
Yep.
When everything's number one, nothing's actually number one.
Right.
You know?
That's the restaurant that has pizza, shrimp, tacos, chicken, Mexican, beef.
Exactly.
Like, all questionable.
Yeah, sometimes I'm telling you, simplicity.
100%. And make sure that all of the people that either contribute to those problems or solve those problems are communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us today,
Of
Liz.
course.
This was
Thank
a
you.
wonderful conversation. So informative. I could have talked to you for another hour.
That's so sweet. I feel the same.
So You Want to Run a Restaurant is created by Back of House, produced and hosted by Claudia Sarek, with Nick Florick as executive producer. Marketing by Hillary Young and Ashley Dunn. Creative by Manisha Kishenchand. And live production by Sarah Heemstra. And of course me, your co-host, Spencer Michael. For more information, visit backofhouse.io/podcast.